eating out or cooking global cuisine. Let's look at the variety of cuisines that are quite popular and some of the issues that one might have in eating out or making them at home and how we can sort of go around those issues related to halal. So, with American foods, those of us who live here are often, used to reading labels and trying to understand what's in everything we buy. And I think gelatin is probably one of the most popular ingredients we're looking at because it's often pork based, but not always. Sometimes it's beef based. Um, Pork byproducts, other than gelatin, can often be found in things, sometimes like gummy bear type of food or snacks for kids, things like that. So anything kind of chewy, snack based, a lot of times gelatin is used to keep the shape of something. So that's often an issue with, snack type foods, but it could be in anything. My concern is also with processed artificial and synthetic ingredients. And I think that, we're just a society of convenience. We love our convenience things. And sometimes those processed foods and artificial things, I mean, they could have, they could be completely quote unquote halal, meaning like there's no real obvious issue with them being halal, but how tayyib, how pure and healthy are they for us? And I think, food colorings and dyes and things like that are really something to be aware of. Look for more plant-based colorings and natural preservatives. Those are going to be your clue to like figuring out the source much easier. And again, going back to things that are just simpler, it's just easier to figure out what's in your food. Asian food. I think the Muslim community as a whole really loves Asian food, and that's great because it's very delicious. Some of the issues that come up with Asian food are number one, soy sauce. Now, I'm all about the natural stuff, but soy sauce, when it is naturally fermented, has alcohol in it. So we need to really pay attention to whether we're having, whether that soy sauce on the table is naturally fermented or if it's sort of synthetic version. Pick your battle, right? Are you going to go with the synthetic, even though it's not really all natural, but it doesn't have the alcohol? My solution is to make your own, and that's in my cookbook. But you just really need to know, if you're avoiding the alcohol, that the naturally brewed soy sauce is going to have alcohol. Pork is pretty big in, and I know when I say Asian food, I mean it spans a variety of cuisines. So I'm just being very, very general here. But you may not obviously see pork in a dish, but it could be used as a base fat for flavor. So you just really want to look at, the flavoring if you're buying packaged foods, and then also the restaurant food. What are they using as fat? I mean, fat's a really big question for a lot of restaurants. Most of the time, I think people today in restaurants are going with the canola oils, the corn oils, vegetable oils, which I don't think are the healthiest. But if you're just, having a dish outside, you'd want to have that over, like a meat based if it's not the biha or ritually slaughtered meat. So something to pay attention to. Alcohol. Some on some menus in Asian restaurants, you might find mirin or sake, which are alcohols, but they also might use them in cooking. So you have to really pay attention to the sauces that are being used in the dishes that you're ordering. Okay, French halal. French is one of my favorite cuisines in the entire world, but it's pretty difficult in terms of like, if you go to a French restaurant, it's really hard, especially if they are very authentic and purely French. I mean, they're going to use the bacon fats to season or just to flavor the base of anything from soups to roasted chicken. I mean, there's just going to be, that's what they use in a lot of the cooking. Aside from butter, the meat fats are just what give the food a lot of flavor. So you're going to have to pay attention to that. Wines and liqueurs are also used as flavorings, so it's not just something that's on the menu as a drink. It could be used in the cooking. And I mentioned animal fats. Animal bloods is not very common, but if you go to like a, maybe if you're in Paris or something, sometimes they'll use like the duck blood, like they have a machine that presses it down, and they extract the blood, and that's used as a sauce. And that's definitely not a halal ingredient. So you have to just always ask and always know. Stocks and broths, again, when you're that's why French food is so flavorful, because they're using every part of the animal. So stocks and broths are going to be used to make a soup. So if a soup is vegetarian, it could have a chicken broth or a beef broth or something. And that's common, not just in French restaurants, but lots of restaurants. Which brings me to Italian, and it's very similar to French in that the wines and liqueurs are often used in cooking, and the pork products are also used as flavorings, and the fats as well, and the broth. So it's all pretty much similar. And you have to, and I put the Italian word for brodo, like some Italian restaurants, the same with French restaurants, they're going to use the word in their language, because that's the authenticity part coming out of their, flair at the restaurant. So just be cognizant of what is actually being put into the food. And you have to really learn to ask the right questions. I think waiters and waitresses are, I've never really had a bad experience with anybody, but it's like you have to ask the right questions to not frustrate them or to confuse them. Just ask about the base of the broth, or the base of the soup, or what kind of fat they're using to cook beans or meats in. You just really have to, or fish, for example. I mean, you really just have to ask the right question and ask it simply, so they're not going back and forth and back and forth. Because they'll go ask the chefs. Waiters and waitresses aren't always going to know what's in everything. And that brings me to Latin food. Gelatina is a really common Mexican dessert, and it's found in lots of Mexican stores as it looks like a Jello, and it's really gelatin. Technically gelatin is a very healthy thing. When it comes from beef, I think, it gives you some calcium, because it's made from the bones of the animal. But in most Latin stores, and particularly Mexican ones, they're mostly going to be sourced from pork. So that's just something to be aware of. And again, here we have the animal fats. Manteca is the name for lard or pork fat, and that's commonly used in not just the cooking, but also the frying of things like tortilla chips. Now, that's not common, but if you're in Mexico or at a very authentically Mexican restaurant, there's people who really take pride in like going back to the roots, they're going to be using that. So you just want to be careful. And same with the broths, and pork flavoring is used in some of the like Latin food packets. So you just really want to make sure that when you read all the labels, and when you're buying something to season food, you just really want to make sure that there isn't any of that pork or even other meat flavorings. And that's it.